straight to the business of the day. I don't intend to detain you here, but just a little interaction to remind the audience that this is still Things Fall Apart Festival, and we must always remember that. So having that in mind, I would like to ask you a very simple question. What does Things Fall Apart mean to you as a book?
Things Fall Apart is one of the books that gave me what I like to call literary permission. It gave me permission to write my own stories. My favorite of Achebe'S novel is I should say, which I think is great. But Things Fall Apart is obviously the best one. When I first read Chinua Achebe'S work, Things Fall Apart, Arrow of God, and the more so amount of people the ones that were not set in pre-colonial Igbo land. It was very eye-opening for me because I grew up reading books, as many of us did, that did not reflect our reality. And even if we were mentioned, it was often in a way that was not very complimentary. And so Things Fall Apart is one of the books that gave me permission. I think it's also a novel that really changed the world because it forced a change in how we were seen by outsiders. It forced outsiders, I think, to acknowledge what somehow they continue to blindly insist on being blind about, which is our humanity.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Delo. Well, I would like to recall that before the writers, even those that came before you, you were the only one that Chinua actually singled out for a very high praise. You know, he said Chimamanda is a writer with a gift of ancient storytellers, and she came almost fully made. And everywhere we go, we recall the Chinua Achebe we know, it's not given to that, such expressions. But, now looking at what Chinua Achebe said and your career trajectory, since the publication of Half of a Yellow Song, it's very clear that he was very prophetic, and that makes me wonder. When you look at Chinua Achebe's career and yours, are there meeting points, are there agreements, the trajectory of your careers? Do you find yourself obsessed by the same curiosities, the same anxieties, the same impulse that must have driven Chinua into taking on all the challenges he took during his time?
Well, first of all, I think that as a creative person, what one wants more than anything else is a feeling of uniqueness. So I think that, I also in general, I don't really spend my time wondering how I'm similar to other writers or not. But I do think that Achebe was a great man. Achebe personified greatness in his work and as a human being. And I also don't like to do a lot of self-analysis. This was my hope. My hope is that the way that he lived his life with integrity, he told his stories truthfully, and he had a deep, abiding love for his people and from where he came from. And I find that deeply moving and admirable. I think if anything both of us were supposed to become doctors. and we fled medicine. So that is one similarity.
Okay, the next question, I'm afraid I'll have to take a direct quote from Chinua Achebe himself, when he talked about the balance of story. He said, and this is really what I personally wish this century to see, a balance of stories where every people will be able to contribute to a definition of themselves, where we are not victims of other people's accounts. And I wonder, would you say that this has come to pass in our own time? Do we have anything that comes close to a balance of stories?
It has changed. We're not quite there yet. We still have a little way to go. But I think that in terms of storytelling and in terms of the stories told about Africans, more Africans are telling African stories. And of course, that's a good thing. But I think there's still a bit of a ways to go. And I remember when I first, so with Purple Hibiscus, the first novel that I wrote, and I was trying to get a publisher in the US. And I started sending the manuscript out, and I got many, many rejections. I think it's important for the young people here to hear that story, but if you want to become something and you want to do something with your life, just because you get rejected is not a reason to stop. You keep pushing, you keep going, you keep trying. I got 25 rejections. Yes, and I counted, and I still have them as evidence in my drawer. I was sending out the manuscript, and I was getting these rejections back. And I remember that many of them said, "We cannot sell you because you're not like anybody else." And the publishing industry really likes the idea of saying, this new writer is like somebody else who's already been published. And so at the time, there was really no contemporary African who was writing contemporary stories and was published or well known in the US. The last writer that they knew of who was well known was Chinua Achebe. But Chinua Achebe's stories were about pre-colonial Africa. I was writing about contemporary small-town Nigeria. I had thrown in Igbo words in the story, and I had made no attempts to simplify things for people to understand easily. So I got many of these rejections, but I kept trying. I kept trying because I believe in trying. And so I want to say to the young people here, keep trying because you never know. Before you give up, make sure that you have put in more than 7,000%.
I hear you.
Before you give up. You need to keep pushing. So imagine what it's like. You go every day. This was before email was common. This was in 2001, 2002. And when you sent out your manuscript, you would include the self-addressed envelope so that they could send their response back to you. So in other words, they didn't have to waste their money if they wanted to say no to you. So imagine what it was like for me. I was a student at the time. And every day, come back from school, I'll go to the mailbox, my heart pounding. And then I would see an envelope in my own handwriting. So I knew that it came from an agent or a publisher that I had sent my manuscript to. And I opened it with my hands shaking, hoping for good news. And it was bad news. Over and over again, 25 times. So I don't want to hear any complaining from young people saying, I tried something 2 times, I did not succeed. You have to keep trying. You have to keep trying. And so one day finally, it was good news. And I will tell you what the woman wrote. First she said, I like your writing, the story is interesting. Nobody knows Nigeria. Nobody's going to buy a book about what you're writing about. You're not like anybody else writing, but I will take a chance on you. And that's how my publishing journey began. My first book was published by a small publishing house that didn't have much of a budget. but they believed in the story. And the book was published. I was told not to have high expectations because the purple hibiscus is set in Nsukka and Enugu. It's not even Lagos that some Americans have at least heard about. But the book became an independent bestseller with very little publicity because the book shows the independent friends would read it. And that's how we became an independent bestseller. And that's also what made other publishers then become interested in publishing the next thing that I wrote. And so, for me, it is important, especially for us in this country, especially for you young people. I know many of you here are talented, many of you here have dreams. Some of you have put your dreams in your pockets because you think there's no point. Bring it out of your pocket and try. And so I will tell you the title of my novel, and I will modify it for you. Don't ever forget that your dreams count.
Wow. Wow. If I get to wait, your line never does a drink. Okay, now let's talk about drink count. To my mind, your most audacious book ever. Both in the scope of the narrative, and what you tried to do, and the way you wanted to carry everybody along, the multiple characters, and everything about the book. I did not talk about, the brilliance of the writing. I'm a sucker for language. So when I began to read it, it was the first thing that struck me. I said, wow, she's back. But I wonder, when I read the book, it's the story of 4 women, and we see them at various stages of their development, and there is a ring of irony that encircles the 4 women, in the sense that even at the height of their power, there was some level of emptiness, and it made me feel sad. So what really is the issue? It seems to me, to point at, a longing, and the pursuit of fulfillment. And at the end of the day, they didn't come off as, fulfilled. So are you trying to pass a commentary on life and its many unfulfilled aspirations and dreams?
No. And quarrel with your reading. Wrong. It's not so when you go drink count while you're from so okay, what I think it's a fair interpretation, but it's not one that I agree with. I think it's also a question of we all long, there's a longing, I think, at the heart of life. I think life, it's a certain longing. We long for joy, we long for meaning, we long for love. And the characters are all different. I don't think that, I don't agree that there's an emptiness there. I think maybe what we can talk about is how differently we can define fulfillment. Right? But I think also that maybe something at play is a certain Nigerian approach to life. We Nigerians are very pragmatic, and that pragmatism can sometimes lead into something close to hard-heartedness, something close to an impatience with the softer things. So I've noticed that my Nigerian readers, the character of Chia, who is a very dreamy person, she's almost everybody who's spoken to me about her in Nigeria, one person said to me, "Is she okay? Is she alright?" And then many of them have said, if you can be on stage in Lagos called Chia, very silly girl. But on the other hand, my American a Nigerian world for you, and also in some ways, a longing for a Nigerian need for clarity. Yes, and sometimes literature doesn't provide clarity. So I would say that my characters, at least most of them, find a certain kind of score at the smarts. I would agree with that. But I think the others, I actually felt that this is my happiest ending of all my work. You know how we all know how it ended. But I felt that this was an ending that had some hope.
Well, okay. Let's leave that there. I was struck by the sheer attention to detail in sculpting the character of Adichie. And what seemed to be a very intense research into Guinea, the Guinean way of life, the things, I was really, you led me into a new world. I didn't know anything about Guinea. When you look at political history, everything was reflected. You brought that to bear on the character of Adichie. You endeared her to me. Okay, yeah, he succeeded. It was a brilliant one. But it leaves me wondering, especially considering that character is modern, Adichie is modern and